There is an animal in the ocean that does not behave the way a predator should. It does not rush toward movement. It does not chase every opportunity. It waits. In that waiting, something begins to form. Positions shift, distances close, and individuals fall into place without confusion. The moment is not sudden, it is prepared. Orcas live in every ocean, from cold polar waters to open seas that stretch beyond sight. They hunt animals far larger than themselves, including whales and powerful sharks. And yet, encounters with humans in the wild almost never turn violent. This contrast does not come from hesitation, it comes from control. Some groups move together to create waves strong enough to pull prey from floating ice. Others approach with precision, targeting a single point that disables movement almost instantly. These actions are not repeated everywhere. They are taught. Calves stay close, watching, learning patterns that belong only to their family. Over time, these patterns become habits, then traditions, then something closer to culture. Different groups begin to behave in ways others do not share. Even their voices change. Calls and signals vary between pods, forming dialects that are not always understood outside their group. What emerges is not just a hunter, but a system, a network of memory, coordination, and shared knowledge moving through the water as one. And before any hunt begins, there is always a moment where nothing seems to happen. No sudden movement, no visible signal, only alignment. Now, let's step beneath the surface and follow what happens next. There is no single place where their story begins, because it is already spread across the entire ocean. From the quiet edges of drifting polar ice to wide tropical waters where the surface seems endless, orcas move through environments that share little except depth. They pass beneath shifting temperatures and changing light, carrying with them a presence that does not belong to any one region, but to the ocean as a whole. In colder seas where currents pull nutrients up from the deep, life gathers in dense and layered forms. Fish move in vast schools, seals rest along broken ice, and larger whales follow these patterns of abundance. Orcas appear most often in these places, not because they are bound to them, but because the ocean itself becomes more active there. The water holds more energy, more movement, more opportunity. Their presence follows this invisible structure, aligning with areas where life concentrates and where the rhythm of feeding becomes more predictable. Closer to shore, some groups remain within familiar coastlines. They move along continental edges, through channels and inlets, where geography shapes the flow of water and the movement of prey. These coastal populations often travel routes that repeat over time, not as fixed territories, but as remembered pathways where conditions tend to return in similar ways. The land provides a kind of reference, a boundary that gently guides movement without enclosing it. Far from shore, others move through open water where there are no visible markers at all. The horizon offers no edges, and depth stretches far below. These offshore groups travel across distances that are difficult to measure, navigating through gradients of temperature and sound that shift slowly beneath the surface. Their paths are less tied to place and more to motion itself, following patterns that exist within the ocean rather than along its borders. What defines their movement is not ownership of space, but responsiveness to change. They do not hold territory in the way land predators might. Instead, they track the shifting presence of food, adjusting their course as prey species move, gather, or disperse. A region that is full one season may quiet in another, and the orcas respond without hesitation, leaving without resistance and returning only when the conditions align again. This creates migrations that are not fixed lines, but living patterns. Some groups follow fish that move with seasonal currents, traveling along routes that expand and contract each year. Others pursue marine mammals whose own migrations span vast distances, leading to journeys that stretch across entire ocean basins. These movements are not rushed. They unfold with a steady pace, guided by memory, experience, and the subtle signals carried through water. Even within the same ocean, different groups can occupy overlapping spaces without blending into one another. Their preferences shape where they are more likely to be found. Some remain in colder regions year-round, while others pass through warmer waters as part of longer routes. The ocean holds all of these paths at once, layered and shifting, without clear separation. At times, their presence seems to appear suddenly in a place that felt empty, then fade just as quietly. This is not randomness, but timing that aligns with cycles not always visible from above. Beneath the surface, temperature boundaries shift, prey gathers or thins, and the orcas move in response, always connected to these underlying changes. Across all of this movement, there is no single map that contains them fully. Their range is not defined by borders, but by the constant exchange between life and environment. Wherever the ocean carries enough energy to sustain the hunt, their path can extend, crossing from one world into another without pause, as if the entire ocean were a single continuous field through which they quietly pass. Before any movement becomes visible, the form is already prepared for it. Beneath the surface, an orca's body carries a quiet geometry, shaped not for excess, but for direction. Every curve, every edge, every proportion settles into a design that favors control over impulse, allowing motion to emerge with minimal resistance. The body narrows toward both ends, a streamlined structure that allows water to pass smoothly along its length. This reduces drag, letting each movement extend further without added effort. Instead of pushing against the ocean, the orca seems to move with it, slipping through shifting currents as if guided by them. The surface of the skin contributes to this flow, smooth and continuous, maintaining a near seamless interaction with the surrounding water. Color becomes part of this design, though it does not draw attention to itself. From above, the dark dorsal side blends into the deeper tones of the ocean, while from below, the lighter underside softens into the brightness filtering down from the surface. This arrangement, known as counter shading, allows the body to dissolve into its environment, depending on the angle of view. The contrast appears bold when seen clearly, yet within the water it breaks apart, becoming less distinct as light and depth shift around it. At the center of propulsion, the tail moves with measured strength. The flukes, broad and horizontal, generate thrust through steady vertical strokes. Each motion is deliberate, transferring energy into forward movement without waste. Rather than constant acceleration, speed is held in reserve, released only when needed. In still moments, the tail slows, maintaining position with subtle adjustments that barely disturb the water. This restraint shapes the way orcas travel. They do not rely on continuous high speed to close distance. Instead, their swimming reflects timing and placement, adjusting position with small changes that accumulate into precise alignment. The body responds quickly to shifts in direction, guided by strong muscles along the spine that coordinate movement from head to tail. The dorsal fin stabilizes this motion, keeping the body balanced as it turns or accelerates. Efficiency becomes most visible over time. During extended movement, energy is conserved through rhythm rather than force. Orcas often maintain moderate speeds that can be sustained across long distances, allowing them to travel without exhaustion. When greater speed is required, the body can shift instantly, producing short bursts that carry them forward with clarity and purpose. These bursts are not prolonged. They serve a moment, then fade back into controlled motion. Breathing also fits into this pattern. Each rise to the surface is brief and timed, allowing oxygen exchange without disrupting forward progress. The body arches smoothly, exposing only what is necessary before returning below. This minimizes interruption, preserving the continuity of movement even during essential pauses. Over the course of a hunt, this balance between power and conservation becomes more apparent. Rather than exhausting themselves in pursuit, orcas adjust their pace, allowing situations to develop while maintaining readiness. Their bodies support this approach, built to sustain attention over time without strain. Muscles remain responsive, capable of sudden action even after long periods of steady travel. The result is a form that does not depend on chaos to succeed. Movement is guided, measured, and adaptable, shaped by a structure that favors precision at every scale. Through this design, the ocean offers little resistance, and each motion, whether subtle or forceful, carries a clarity that reflects the quiet control beneath it. Long before the name settled into its current form, it moved through language in a different order, shaped by what was first witnessed rather than what was fully understood. Early encounters did not begin with classification or careful study. They began with observation at a distance, where form and behavior were interpreted through the limits of the moment. Sailors and whalers, moving across open water in search of large baleen whales, sometimes came upon scenes that disrupted familiar expectations. Groups of orcas were seen surrounding animals far larger than themselves, working in coordination that unfolded over time. The struggle was not sudden. It stretched across long intervals, marked by repeated approaches and controlled movements that gradually weakened their target. These encounters left a strong impression, one that carried back into the language used to describe them. In those early accounts, the name that emerged was closer to whale killer, a phrase that reflected the direction of the action rather than the identity of the animal. It was not meant to define what the orca was, but what it was seen to do. The wording placed emphasis on the outcome, on the ability to bring down creatures that had long been regarded as among the most powerful in the ocean. Over time, as the phrase passed between languages and across regions, its structure shifted. The order reversed, and whale killer gradually became killer whale, a subtle change that carried a different weight. This new form suggested something broader, less specific, as if the defining trait extended beyond those early observations. The focus moved away from a particular behavior and toward an implied nature. In this transition, the precision of the original meaning softened, and the name began to stand on its own, detached from the context that had first shaped it. The descriptions recorded by those who spent long periods at sea contributed to this shift. Their accounts often emphasized the intensity of what they had seen, the coordination, the persistence, the outcome. Without the benefit of prolonged study, these moments became the foundation for understanding. The orca was framed through encounters that were rare but striking, and these impressions traveled more easily than quieter details. As knowledge expanded, a more layered picture began to form. Observations revealed that not all groups behaved in the same way, and that their diets and strategies could vary widely depending on where they lived. Some focused on fish, moving through schools with a different rhythm, while others pursued marine mammals with methods that reflected their own learned patterns. The early name, however, remained unchanged, carrying with it the weight of its origins, even as new information accumulated around it. There is a certain stillness in how names persist. Once established, they move forward through time with little resistance, even when understanding grows beyond them. Killer whale continues to be used, not because it fully describes the animal, but because it has become familiar, anchored in language through repetition and history. Within the water, the orca does not carry this name. Its movements, its interactions, its place within the ocean exist independently of the words used to describe it. The name belongs to those observing from the outside, shaped by moments of encounter and the need to translate them into something that can be spoken and remembered. What remains is a quiet contrast between the simplicity of the term and the complexity it attempts to hold. The origin of the name reflects a narrow window of observation, while the life it points toward continues to unfold in ways that extend far beyond that first impression. Within each group, identity is not carried by a single individual, but held collectively, shaped through relationships that remain stable across time. An orca is born into a structure that already exists, a network of connections that does not need to be formed, only entered. From the beginning, position is defined not by dominance or rank, but by lineage, following a line that traces back through mothers and those who came before them. At the center of this structure, older females maintain a quiet continuity. They are not separate from the group, yet their presence anchors it, guiding movement through experience that has accumulated over many years. These matriarchs carry knowledge that extends beyond immediate conditions, holding memory of routes, timing, and patterns that repeat with subtle variation. Their role is not imposed, but recognized through the consistency of their decisions, which align with the needs of the group as a whole. Around them, offspring remain close, not only during early development, but throughout their lives. Unlike many other species, separation is rare. Sons and daughters continue to travel with their mother, forming stable units that persist across decades. This creates a continuity where relationships do not dissolve as individuals mature, but deepen, reinforced through shared experience and coordinated movement. The group becomes a living record, where each member reflects a part of its history. Multiple generations often move together within the same pod, creating layers of connection that overlap in time. Calves grow alongside older siblings, while grandmothers remain present, linking past and present through their continued participation. This arrangement allows learning to flow naturally, not as a formal process, but as an ongoing exchange embedded within daily life. Younger orcas observe, imitate, and gradually align their behavior with the patterns surrounding them. Cooperation emerges from this structure without the need for explicit coordination. Movements align because individuals are accustomed to one another, responding to subtle shifts in position and pace. Hunting, travel, and rest unfold as shared activities, guided by familiarity rather than instruction. The group functions as a unified system where each member contributes to the whole without losing their individual role within it. The presence of elders adds depth to this system. As females age beyond their reproductive years, they continue to play an active role within the pod. Their experience becomes a resource that supports survival, particularly in times when conditions change or become less predictable. They guide the group toward areas where food is more likely to be found, drawing on knowledge that extends across many cycles. This influence does not rely on force or authority, but on the reliability of past outcomes that shape present decisions. Within this structure, bonds are reinforced through constant proximity and shared activity. Individuals maintain close spatial relationships, often moving in parallel, surfacing together, and adjusting their pace to remain aligned. These patterns create a sense of cohesion that persists even as the group travels across large distances. Separation is minimal, and when it occurs, it is usually brief, with individuals returning to the same formation that has been maintained over time. The result is a social system that does not depend on change to function. Stability becomes its defining feature, allowing knowledge, behavior, and relationships to persist without interruption. Each generation inherits not only the physical traits of those before them, but also the patterns that shape how they move through the ocean. Through this continuity, the pod becomes more than a group of individuals. It becomes a structure that carries memory forward, holding together past and present within a single, enduring form. Sound moves differently in water, carrying farther, holding its shape as it travels through depth. Within this medium, orcas shape their presence not only through movement, but through patterns of sound that surround and connect them. These sounds do not drift without structure. They form sequences, repeated and recognized, creating a shared system that binds each group together. Within a single pod, vocal patterns remain consistent, forming a kind of acoustic signature that distinguishes one group from another. These patterns include pulsed calls, whistles, and clicks, each carrying a specific rhythm and contour. The combinations are not random. They follow arrangements that are maintained over time, allowing individuals to recognize one another even when distance separates them. Through these recurring forms, the group remains connected even when visibility fades. The use of sound extends into daily movement. Calls are exchanged as individuals adjust their positions, maintaining alignment without relying on constant visual contact. Subtle variations in timing and intensity provide information about spacing, direction, and activity. When traveling through complex environments, these signals allow the group to remain coordinated, shifting together with minimal disruption. The water becomes a shared field of awareness, shaped by the sounds they produce and receive. Beyond coordination, vocal patterns contribute to social bonds. Individuals engage in exchanges that do not serve an immediate practical purpose, yet reinforce their connection within the group. These interactions occur during periods of rest or slow movement, where sequences of calls pass between members in a steady rhythm. The repetition of familiar sounds strengthens recognition, maintaining cohesion across time. What emerges from this system is not a fixed set of signals, but a learned form of communication. Young orcas do not produce the full range of calls at birth. Instead, they begin with simpler sounds, gradually refining them through exposure to the patterns used by older members of their pod. Over time, their vocalizations align with those around them, matching the specific structure of their group's calls. This process reflects learning rather than instinct alone, shaped by constant listening and imitation. The transmission of these patterns occurs across generations. As calves grow, they absorb the acoustic environment created by their family, internalizing its rhythms and variations. When new calls appear within a group, they can spread gradually, becoming part of the shared repertoire. This continuity allows each pod to maintain its identity, even as subtle changes accumulate over time. Differences between populations become clear when these patterns are compared. Groups that occupy the same broad region may still use distinct sets of calls, reflecting separate histories and limited interaction. In some cases, these differences are pronounced enough that communication between pods becomes less effective, not because sound cannot travel, but because its structure is not shared. Each group carries its own acoustic system, shaped by its lineage and experience. The ocean holds these overlapping languages without merging them. Sound travels freely, yet meaning remains tied to those who recognize its form. When pods pass near one another, their calls may cross through the same water, remaining separate in structure even as they occupy the same space. Within this layered field of sound, identity is carried not only through movement or appearance, but through patterns that unfold in time. Each call, each sequence, contributes to a system that exists beyond any single individual, linking members together through a shared and evolving language. The result is a form of communication that reflects both stability and change. Patterns persist across generations, yet remain flexible enough to adapt as the group continues to move through its environment. Through sound, the pod maintains its coherence, shaping a presence that extends beyond what can be seen, carried quietly through the water in forms that are learned, remembered, and shared. Inside the skull, beyond what can be seen in motion or heard in passing sound, a different layer of structure shapes how orcas move through their world. The brain is large, not only in size, but in the complexity of its folds, with a surface that expands into intricate patterns. These convolutions increase the area available for processing, creating a system capable of integrating information across many channels at once. Certain regions within this structure are associated with emotion and social awareness, forming networks that respond not only to external conditions, but to the presence and behavior of others. These areas are well developed, suggesting a sensitivity to relationships that extends beyond simple interaction. Signals from the body, from sound, and from movement are brought together, allowing responses to be shaped by both immediate context and the broader state of the group. This integration becomes visible in the way orcas respond to changing situations. When encountering unfamiliar conditions, they do not rely on a single, fixed pattern. Instead, they adjust, testing variations in movement and timing until a solution begins to form. These adjustments are often subtle, emerging through small changes that accumulate into a new approach. The process reflects a capacity for problem solving that is flexible rather than rigid, guided by observation and feedback rather than instinct alone. Memory plays a central role in this process. Experiences are not isolated events, but become part of a larger internal record that can be drawn upon when needed. Orcas recognize individuals within their group, maintaining awareness of relationships over long periods. This recognition is not limited to recent interactions, but can persist across years, allowing connections to remain intact even after time apart. The brain supports this continuity, holding detailed information that informs future behavior. Spatial memory also contributes to how they navigate their environment. Patterns of movement, locations of past encounters, and sequences of events are retained and integrated, creating a layered understanding of their surroundings. This allows them to move through complex spaces with confidence, adjusting their path based on both current conditions and remembered experience. The ocean, though constantly shifting, becomes more predictable through this accumulated knowledge. Within the group, awareness extends beyond individual recognition into an understanding of collective dynamics. Each member appears to track the position and behavior of others, adjusting in response to subtle changes that ripple through the pod. This awareness supports coordinated movement without the need for overt signals, as individuals anticipate and align with one another in real time. The brain processes these relationships continuously, maintaining a balance between individual action and group cohesion. Emotional processing is interwoven with these cognitive functions. Responses to social interaction, to separation, and to reunion are shaped by neural systems that register more than simple stimulus and reaction. These systems allow for nuanced responses that reflect the history shared between individuals, influencing how they approach one another and how they behave within the group. The combination of these elements creates a form of intelligence that is distributed across many layers. It is not confined to a single ability, but emerges from the interaction between memory, perception, emotion, and social awareness. Each component contributes to a broader capacity that supports adaptability and cohesion. Beneath the surface, This internal structure guides behavior in ways that are not immediately visible. Movements that appear fluid and coordinated are supported by processes that integrate information continuously, shaping decisions as they unfold. The brain does not act in isolation, but in constant exchange with the body and the environment, forming a system that responds with precision and depth. Through this quiet complexity, orcas navigate not only the physical space around them, but the social world they inhabit, carrying within them a network of understanding that grows with each shared experience. Light does not behave the same way once it enters the ocean. It softens, scatters, and fades with depth, reshaping what can be seen and how clearly it can be understood. Within this shifting field, orcas rely on more than a single way of perceiving their surroundings, combining vision and sound into a layered awareness that adjusts as conditions change. Their eyes are adapted to function both above and below the surface, allowing them to transition between two very different environments without losing clarity. When submerged, the shape of the eye and the structure of the lens compensate for the way water bends light, maintaining focus even as visibility decreases. Near the surface, when the body rises and the eye briefly meets open air, this same system adjusts, preserving enough clarity to interpret what lies beyond the waterline. The shift is seamless, requiring no pause, no visible adjustment, only a continuation of awareness across boundaries. Yet vision alone is often limited. As depth increases, light diminishes, and suspended particles scatter what remains. In these conditions, another form of perception becomes more prominent. Orcas produce sequences of clicks, brief and controlled pulses of sound that move outward through the water. When these signals encounter an object, they return as echoes, carrying information shaped by what they have touched. The returning sound holds details about distance, size, and structure, forming an acoustic image that can be interpreted with remarkable precision. This process, known as echolocation, allows the orca to perceive its environment even when visibility approaches absence. The clicks are not continuous, but timed, spaced in a way that allows each echo to return before the next signal is sent. This creates a rhythm of emission and reception, a quiet exchange between the animal and its surroundings. The brain processes these echoes rapidly, translating them into a coherent sense of space that extends beyond what the eyes can provide. In waters where light still penetrates, vision and echolocation overlap, complementing one another. The eyes detect movement, contrast, and direction, while sound refines the details, confirming position and form. Together, these systems create a more complete understanding, allowing the orca to navigate and respond with accuracy, even as conditions shift from clear to obscured. When locating prey, this combined perception becomes especially focused. Subtle disturbances in the water, faint movements, or changes in the distribution of sound can indicate presence. Echolocation pulses become more frequent and directed, narrowing the field of attention. The returning echoes sharpen, revealing the outline and motion of a target. At the same time, vision, when available, tracks alignment, ensuring that movement remains controlled and precise. As distance closes, adjustments become smaller, more refined. The body responds to the information received, shifting position in ways that minimize unnecessary motion. Each correction is informed by a continuous flow of sensory input, allowing the approach to remain steady. There is no need for sudden acceleration when positioning has already been achieved through careful perception. Even in near darkness, this system remains effective. The absence of light does not remove awareness, only changes the balance between senses. Sound carries where light cannot, maintaining a connection between the orca and its surroundings. Objects that would remain unseen become defined through their acoustic presence, allowing movement to continue without interruption. Through this layered perception, the ocean is not an empty or obscured space. It becomes structured, filled with information that extends in all directions. Vision and sound merge into a single experience, guiding movement with clarity that does not depend on light alone, but on the continuous exchange between the orca and the world it moves within. At the edge of early life, before strength has fully formed and before movement becomes precise, learning begins without instruction in the way it is often imagined. A calf remains close, positioned slightly behind or beside its mother, where it can observe without interrupting the flow of the group. From this position, the first patterns take shape, not as clear steps, but as sequences that repeat with subtle variation. During these early months, participation is limited. The calf does not lead or initiate, but follows, adjusting its movement to remain aligned. It watches the spacing between individuals, the timing of turns, and the way the group shifts together in response to changing conditions. These details accumulate gradually, forming a foundation that will support later action. Nothing is hurried, and nothing is isolated. Each moment contributes quietly to the next. As time passes, involvement begins to increase in small ways. The calf moves closer during moments of activity, attempting to match the pace and direction of those around it. These early attempts are often imperfect. Movements lack precision. Timing falls slightly out of alignment, and the outcome does not always match the intention. Yet these variations are not corrected through force. They are absorbed into the process, becoming part of the gradual refinement that shapes behavior over years. Adults play an active role within this progression, though their influence is rarely overt. Their movements become demonstrations, repeated with consistency so that they can be observed and understood. When approaching prey, they adjust their speed and position in ways that reveal structure, allowing the calf to witness how alignment is achieved before contact occurs. These demonstrations are not separated from the hunt itself. They are embedded within it, allowing learning to unfold alongside action. At times, opportunities arise for practice that does not carry the same demands as a full hunt. Smaller or more manageable prey may be engaged in ways that allow younger individuals to attempt movements without the same level of consequence. In these moments, the calf begins to act more directly, testing its ability to approach, adjust, and respond. Success is not immediate, and failure becomes part of the process. A missed movement, a delayed turn, or an incomplete approach does not end the learning. It becomes information carried forward into the next attempt. Repetition strengthens this process. The same patterns appear again and again, each time offering a slightly different context. Through this repetition, movements become more consistent, timing improves, and coordination with others begins to align more closely. The calf's role within the group starts to shift, moving from observation toward participation, though the transition remains gradual. Guidance continues throughout this period, not as direct correction, but as a steady presence that shapes the environment in which learning occurs. Adults maintain positions that support the calf's attempts, adjusting their own movements to create space for practice while preserving the structure of the group. This balance allows learning to progress without disrupting the cohesion that defines the pod. Over the years, these accumulated experiences form a coherent set of abilities. What began as observation becomes action, and what once required close following becomes more independent movement within the group. The calf, now older, carries forward the patterns it has absorbed, integrating them into its own behavior. Learning does not conclude at a fixed point. It continues as conditions change, as new situations arise, and as the individual remains part of a system that is always adjusting. The early lessons remain present within this ongoing process, shaping how each movement is made, how each decision unfolds, and how the individual aligns with the group that first carried it forward. Before any visible motion takes shape, attention gathers. The group settles into a quieter rhythm where movement slows and spacing becomes more deliberate. This is not stillness, but a shift in focus, where each individual begins to register subtle changes in the surrounding water. Small disturbances, faint variations in pressure, and distant vibrations begin to stand out against the background. Sound becomes one of the first guides. Not all signals are produced by the orcas themselves. Many arrive from the environment, carried through water from sources that remain out of sight. The movement of a distant body, the collective shifting of a school, or the brief displacement caused by a single animal can create patterns that travel outward. These patterns are detected and interpreted, forming the earliest indication that something is present. In some moments, the group remains quiet, reducing their own output to avoid altering the flow of information around them. This silence allows external signals to stand out more clearly, making it easier to isolate direction and distance. The absence of sound is not a lack, but a condition that sharpens perception. Each individual maintains awareness, adjusting positions slightly as new information is gathered. At other times, vocalization becomes part of the process. Short sequences of sound pass between members, not continuously, but in measured intervals that support coordination. These exchanges provide updates on position and orientation, ensuring that alignment is maintained as attention narrows toward a specific area. The choice between silence and sound is not fixed. It shifts according to the conditions, balancing the need for clarity with the need for connection. As detection becomes more certain, the group begins to refine its arrangement. Individuals spread out or draw closer, depending on what the situation requires. The formation is not rigid, but responsive, adjusting through small changes that create a wider field of coverage. This positioning allows multiple perspectives to converge, increasing the accuracy of what is being tracked. Within a group of potential targets, selection begins to take shape. Not all individuals are pursued. Subtle differences become significant, variations in movement, spacing, or condition that distinguish one from another. These distinctions are recognized without disruption, emerging through observation rather than sudden action. The focus narrows gradually, settling on a single point within a larger pattern. Once a target is identified, positioning becomes more precise. Individuals take on roles that align with their relative location, moving into places that support the unfolding sequence. Some maintain distance, shaping the boundary of movement, while others adjust closer, preparing for a more direct approach. These roles are not assigned through visible signals, but emerge from shared understanding and experience. The space around the target begins to change. What was once open becomes structured, with pathways that limit direction and options that begin to narrow. This shift occurs without abrupt movement, guided instead by controlled adjustments that remain difficult to detect from within. The target continues to move, yet the environment around it is gradually being shaped. Throughout this process, speed remains restrained. There is no immediate rush forward, no sudden acceleration, that breaks the continuity of the moment. Energy is conserved, held in reserve, while positioning reaches a state where action can be taken with greater efficiency. The group maintains this balance, allowing the situation to develop until alignment is complete. In this early phase of the hunt, nothing appears urgent. The water carries only subtle indications of what is forming. Yet within this quiet arrangement, the essential elements are already in place. Detection has become focus. Focus has become structure, and the group has moved into position, ready to act without disrupting the calm that still surrounds them. Alignment begins long before contact, forming a pattern that is shared across the group without the need for visible direction. Each individual settles into a position that complements the others, creating a structure that is flexible yet precise. The spacing between them is not uniform, but intentional, shaped by subtle adjustments that keep the formation balanced as it moves. Within this arrangement, roles emerge naturally. Some orcas maintain a wider arc, holding the outer edges of the formation and guiding the general flow of movement. Others position themselves closer to the center, where their proximity allows for more direct interaction. These roles are not fixed, and individuals can shift between them as conditions change, but at any given moment, each position contributes to the coherence of the whole. As the group closes in, the space around the target begins to narrow. Movement that once had multiple directions becomes gradually constrained, not through sudden force, but through the steady presence of bodies placed with care. The encirclement does not form as a perfect ring, but as a living boundary that adapts to the motion of what it surrounds. Openings appear and close, guiding the target's path without the need for abrupt intervention. Timing becomes the central element in this process. Each movement is measured against the others, creating a rhythm that allows actions to align. A turn made by one individual is matched by another, slightly offset in time, creating a sequence that flows rather than collides. Acceleration is introduced in brief, controlled moments, coordinated so that the group maintains its structure even as speed increases. Communication supports this alignment, though it often remains subtle. Short signals pass between individuals, not continuously, but at moments where adjustment is needed. These exchanges reinforce awareness, ensuring that each member remains connected to the unfolding pattern. In quieter phases, the absence of sound carries its own meaning, allowing attention to focus on external cues without interference. The effectiveness of this cooperation becomes evident in how little excess movement occurs. Each action serves a purpose, reducing the need for prolonged pursuit. Where a solitary predator might rely on extended chasing, the group distributes effort, allowing the outcome to be shaped through coordination rather than endurance. Energy is used carefully, conserved until the moment when it can be applied with the greatest effect. As positions tighten, the structure reaches a point where options for the target diminish. The surrounding formation adjusts in response to each change in direction, maintaining pressure without breaking alignment. Individuals anticipate shifts before they fully develop, responding to early indications rather than waiting for clear movement. This anticipation allows the group to remain one step ahead, preserving the integrity of the formation. Throughout the process, no single individual dominates the action. The success of the hunt depends on the consistency of the group, on the ability of each member to maintain their role while adapting to the whole. This balance creates a system where movement appears unified, not because it is controlled by one, but because it is shared among many. In this coordinated motion, the boundary between individuals becomes less distinct. The group functions as a single entity, its shape defined by the positions and actions of those within it. Each movement contributes to a larger pattern, one that extends beyond any single perspective. Through this form of cooperation, the hunt unfolds with a quiet efficiency. The ocean around them remains in motion, yet within the formation, there is a sense of order that guides each step. The result is not a display of force, but a demonstration of alignment, where multiple bodies move together with a clarity that transforms individual effort into a collective outcome. At the surface, where water meets air and forms a shifting boundary, a different kind of interaction begins to take shape. Floating ice drifts with quiet instability, carrying with it small platforms that rise and fall with each passing movement beneath. On these fragments, seals rest between dives, positioned just above the reach of the water, relying on elevation rather than speed. Beneath these surfaces, orcas gather without immediate disturbance. Their presence does not break the calm at once. Instead, they arrange themselves below and beside the ice, aligning their bodies in a way that reflects shared intention. The spacing between them becomes deliberate, each individual taking a position that contributes to a larger pattern forming just out of sight. The movement that follows is not directed at the seal itself, but at the structure supporting it. With a coordinated surge, the group advances together, driving their bodies forward in near unison. The force generated does not scatter outward without purpose. It travels upward, compressing the water against the underside of the ice and lifting it in a controlled rise. The result is a wave that breaks across the surface, shifting the balance of what rests upon it. This action is rarely singular. The first surge may tilt the ice slightly, altering its angle, but not dislodging what it carries. The orcas then reposition, returning to their starting arrangement with minimal disruption. Another coordinated movement follows, similar in form yet adjusted in strength and timing. Each repetition changes the stability of the ice, weakening its resistance through cumulative effect. The seal responds to these shifts, adjusting its position as the surface beneath it becomes less predictable. The orcas remain focused on the structure, not reacting to each small movement above, but continuing to reshape the conditions that support it. Their approach reflects an understanding that the outcome depends on altering the environment rather than pursuing the target directly. Timing remains central throughout. The surge must be synchronized, with each individual contributing force at the same moment. If the movement is uneven, the energy disperses and the effect diminishes. Through repeated attempts, the group maintains alignment, refining the coordination required to produce a wave of sufficient strength. Younger orcas often remain close during these sequences, observing from positions that allow them to witness both the formation and execution of each attempt. Their role at first is passive, following the movement of the group without contributing fully to the force generated. Over time, they begin to participate in smaller ways, adjusting their timing and positioning in response to what they have seen. This progression reflects a form of learning that extends beyond instinct. The technique is not universal across all groups, suggesting that it is acquired rather than inherent. Calves absorb the sequence through repeated exposure, gradually aligning their actions with those of more experienced individuals. As they mature, their contributions become more precise, integrating into the collective movement. The interaction between water and ice becomes a medium through which this behavior is expressed. The orcas do not break the surface randomly, nor do they rely on chance. Each movement is shaped by the understanding that force can be transferred through the water in a way that alters what lies above it. The ice, though solid, responds to these pressures, shifting in ways that reflect the coordinated effort below. Through this method, the hunt unfolds without direct contact until the final moment. The environment itself becomes part of the process, transformed through repeated, synchronized action. What begins as stillness at the surface gradually gives way to controlled disturbance, guided by a group moving together beneath, shaping the outcome through precision and persistence. Distance defines the beginning of these encounters, a wide expanse separating one presence from another. Within that space, attention settles on movement that differs slightly from the rest, a variation in rhythm or alignment that sets a single individual apart. Among larger whales traveling together, these differences can be subtle, yet they are enough to draw focus, guiding the group toward a point that will shape everything that follows. The approach remains measured. There is no immediate surge forward, no attempt to close the distance all at once. Instead, the orcas adjust their positions gradually, aligning themselves along paths that intersect with the movement of their target. Each individual takes a place that contributes to a broader structure, one that allows them to influence direction without forcing it abruptly. Selection becomes more defined as the group draws nearer. The individual chosen is often one that shows a slight imbalance, perhaps in speed or in spacing from others. This distinction is not always visible from afar, but becomes clearer as proximity increases. The orcas do not disrupt the entire group they encounter. Their attention remains focused, narrowing onto a single presence within the larger motion. Once alignment is achieved, the strategy begins to unfold through repeated interaction rather than a single, decisive moment. The orcas move in coordinated patterns, approaching and withdrawing in sequences that maintain pressure without exhausting themselves. Each approach is controlled, aimed at influencing the movement of the target rather than overwhelming it immediately. The larger whale responds, adjusting its course, accelerating, or attempting to rejoin others, yet the orcas remain positioned to guide these changes. Over time, this interaction becomes a process of gradual fatigue. The target is required to sustain movement, to respond continuously, while the orcas distribute their effort across the group. Individuals take turns approaching, allowing others brief intervals of reduced exertion. This rotation preserves energy, ensuring that the collective effort can be maintained across extended periods. The hunt may continue for hours, stretching across distances that reshape the initial setting. Water that once held a wide separation becomes a field of repeated convergence where movement is directed and redirected through persistent contact. The orcas maintain their formation, adjusting as needed, but never abandoning the structure that supports their strategy. Throughout this process, timing remains essential. Each approach is coordinated with the positions of others, creating sequences that prevent the target from finding a consistent escape path. The orcas anticipate shifts in direction, responding before they fully develop, maintaining a presence that limits options without requiring constant speed. As fatigue increases, the balance begins to change. Movements that were once strong become less sustained, responses slower, alignment more difficult to maintain. The orcas adjust their positioning accordingly, closing in with greater precision while still conserving unnecessary effort. Their movements remain controlled, guided by the same structure that has carried the process from the beginning. The outcome emerges not from a single act of force, but from the accumulation of coordinated actions over time. Each movement contributes to a gradual shift, one that transforms distance into proximity, strength into fatigue, and possibility into narrowing space. Within this extended sequence, The group functions as a unified system, its effectiveness rooted in persistence and coordination rather than speed alone. The larger whale, once moving freely within its environment, becomes increasingly constrained by the structure surrounding it, shaped by the steady, measured presence of those that move together with purpose and restraint. Not all encounters rely on prolonged pursuit or gradual fatigue. In certain moments, the interaction becomes brief, focused, and highly specific, shaped by an understanding of anatomy rather than endurance. When orcas encounter sharks, the sequence that follows reflects a different approach, one where precision replaces the need for extended effort. Sharks move through the water with a structure that appears robust, supported by a skeleton of cartilage and powered by steady, lateral motion. Their bodies are designed for constant forward movement, with respiration and stability closely linked to this flow. Yet, within this design lies a point of vulnerability, not immediately visible, but consistent across individuals. The liver, large and rich in energy, occupies a significant portion of the body cavity, positioned in a way that makes it both essential and exposed under the right conditions. Orcas approach with a controlled alignment, closing distance without unnecessary acceleration. The interaction does not begin with a chase. Instead, it unfolds through positioning, where one or more individuals move alongside the shark, adjusting their angle relative to its direction. The goal is not to overwhelm through force, but to reach a point where a specific movement can be applied with accuracy. At the moment of contact, the orca directs its body toward the shark's midsection, using a combination of momentum and leverage to alter its orientation. This action can turn the shark onto its side or invert it completely, disrupting the balance that maintains its normal function. When this position is held, a physiological response begins to take effect. Known as tonic immobility, this state reduces the shark's ability to move, creating a temporary paralysis that limits resistance. This shift occurs quickly, often within seconds of the initial contact. The shark, which relies on continuous motion, becomes still, its usual patterns interrupted. The orca maintains control during this interval, positioning itself to access the area where the liver is located. Rather than engaging in repeated strikes, the orca focuses on a single, targeted action, opening the body cavity with precision. The liver, dense with lipids, provides a concentrated source of energy. By accessing this organ directly, the orca gains significant nutritional benefit without the need to consume the entire animal. This selective feeding reflects an efficiency that aligns with the broader patterns of their behavior, where effort is balanced against reward. Observations of great white sharks have revealed the consistency of this method. In regions where these encounters occur, sharks have been found with specific injuries that correspond to targeted removal of the liver, while other tissues remain largely untouched. The pattern suggests a repeated strategy rather than isolated events, indicating that this approach is known and practiced within certain groups. The interaction itself remains brief compared to other forms of hunting. Once the target is immobilized and the necessary action completed, the orcas disengage, allowing the process to conclude without prolonged struggle. The surrounding water returns to its previous state, with little evidence of the sequence that has just taken place. This method does not rely on overwhelming strength, even though strength is present. Instead, it reflects an understanding of structure, of how a single adjustment can alter the outcome entirely. By focusing on a specific point within the shark's body, the orcas reduce the need for extended effort, achieving their goal through accuracy rather than repetition. Within this approach, the the balance between knowledge and action becomes clear. The outcome is shaped not by the scale of force applied, but by where and how it is directed. Through this focused interaction, the orcas demonstrate a form of hunting that is both efficient and refined, guided by precision that transforms a complex encounter into a brief and controlled sequence. Across the same expanse of ocean, where currents pass without visible borders, differences begin to emerge that are not shaped by distance alone, but by preference carried over time. Groups that move through overlapping waters can follow entirely different paths of behavior, guided by choices that persist across generations. These differences are not momentary adjustments. They settle into patterns that define how each group lives, hunts, and interacts with its surroundings. Some populations focus almost entirely on fish, moving in ways that reflect the rhythm of schooling species. Their approach is shaped by the need to engage with large numbers at once, responding to collective movement rather than individual targets. Coordination within these groups often emphasizes containment, guiding the motion of many into a more controlled form. The energy required is distributed evenly, with each individual contributing to a shared structure that aligns with the shifting density of their prey. Elsewhere, other groups concentrate on marine mammals, adopting methods that differ not only in execution, but in pace and intent. Their interactions are directed towards single individuals or small groups, where precision and timing become more prominent. The structure of these hunts reflects the nature of their prey, requiring a different arrangement of positions and a different sequence of movement. The contrast between these approaches extends beyond the hunt itself, shaping daily patterns and the way each group navigates its environment. These distinctions often align with specific regions, though not in a fixed or exclusive way. Certain coastal areas support fish-eating populations that return along familiar routes, while nearby waters may host groups that pursue entirely different prey. The environment provides opportunities, but it does not dictate a single outcome. Instead, each group maintains its own specialization, continuing along paths that have proven consistent over time. Behavioral differences extend into subtle aspects of movement and interaction. Groups that focus on fish may use more frequent vocalization, maintaining contact as they coordinate around shifting schools. In contrast, those that pursue marine mammals often reduce sound during key moments, relying on positioning and timing that minimize detection. These variations reflect the demands of their chosen prey, shaping not only how they hunt, but how they communicate and move as a group. Over time, these patterns become deeply embedded, forming a kind of separation that persists even when groups share the same broader environment. Interaction between different populations remains limited, not due to physical barriers, but because their behaviors and preferences do not align. Each group continues along its own trajectory, guided by the knowledge it has accumulated and the methods it has refined. This separation is reinforced through learning. Young orcas adopt the practices of their group, absorbing not only techniques, but the selection of prey itself. The choice of what to hunt becomes part of the inherited structure passed through observation and repetition. As a result, specialization is maintained without the need for external boundaries, sustained through continuity within the pod. The ocean, though continuous, holds these distinct patterns simultaneously. Different groups move through the same waters without merging their behaviors, each maintaining its own approach to survival. Their paths may cross in space, but remain separate in practice, shaped by traditions that define what they pursue and how they pursue it. Within this quiet division, diversity emerges, not from isolation, but from the persistence of learned behavior across time. Each group carries its own way of interacting with the ocean, forming a mosaic of strategies that exist side by side, connected by the same environment, yet guided by different choices that continue to shape their movement through it. Time in these moments stretches without urgency. Movement slows, not because the opportunity is gone, but because it has not yet reached the point where action is required. Within this interval, the group holds position with quiet control, allowing the situation to develop on its own terms rather than forcing it forward. The distance between predator and prey is maintained with care. It is close enough to observe, yet far enough to avoid drawing immediate attention. Small adjustments keep this balance intact, each individual shifting slightly to remain aligned with the others. There is no sudden advance, no immediate attempt to close the gap. Instead, the orcas remain present without becoming obvious, part of the surrounding motion rather than a disruption within it. This waiting is not passive. It is filled with attention, with continuous observation of movement, spacing, and rhythm. The prey continues along its path, unaware of how closely it is being studied. Subtle changes begin to appear over time, variations in direction, in pace, or in position relative to others. These changes are noted, not acted upon immediately, but held within awareness as the situation evolves. Energy remains conserved during this phase. The body stays in a state of readiness, but avoids unnecessary exertion. By not engaging too early, the orcas preserve their capacity for the moment when it will matter most. This restraint allows them to sustain their presence over longer periods, maintaining focus without diminishing their ability to respond when the time arrives. As the prey continues to move, patterns begin to shift. Alignment may loosen, spacing may change, or attention may drift in ways that create small openings. These moments are not forced by the orcas, but emerge naturally as part of the prey's own behavior. The group watches for these shifts, allowing them to become more defined before acting. Timing becomes the central element. The decision to move is not based on proximity alone, but on the convergence of conditions that favor a controlled outcome. When these conditions align, the transition from stillness to action is smooth, almost continuous with what came before. There is no abrupt break, only a gradual increase in movement that carries the group forward. By waiting, the orcas allow the prey to contribute to its own vulnerability. A slight misalignment, a delayed response, or a moment of distraction can create the opening that has been anticipated. These moments are brief, but within them lies the advantage that patience has made possible. The group responds not to the general presence of prey, but to the specific instance where effort will yield the greatest effect. This approach reduces the need for prolonged pursuit. Instead of expending energy in continuous motion, the orcas apply it in focused intervals, where each movement serves a clear purpose. The balance between stillness and action becomes a defining feature of the hunt, shaping how and when effort is used. Throughout this process, the group remains cohesive, each individual aligned with the shared rhythm of waiting and response. No single member initiates prematurely, and no one lags behind when the moment arrives. This consistency ensures that the transition from observation to action remains controlled, preserving the structure that has been maintained during the waiting phase. In this measured approach, the hunt unfolds with a quiet efficiency. The ocean continues its broader motion, yet within this localized interaction, time is shaped by restraint. By allowing events to progress without interference, the orcas position themselves within the flow of the moment, ready to act only when the conditions have fully formed, turning patience into a decisive advantage. failure enters the water quietly. There is no visible marker that separates a successful hunt from one that slips away, only a gradual change in motion, a widening of distance, a pattern that does not close in the way it was meant to. The prey remains beyond reach, the formation loosens, and the group settles back into a calmer pace, carrying with it the unfinished shape of what almost happened. Such moments are not rare interruptions in the life of orcas. They are part of it. Even within a system built on coordination and experience, outcomes remain uncertain, shaped by weather, visibility, the condition of the prey, and the timing of countless small movements that cannot always be controlled. A target may turn at the right instant, a school may split too suddenly, or an opening may narrow before the group can make use of it. The hunt then dissolves, not into disorder, but into adjustment. What follows is not wasted effort. The group continues to move, yet something has shifted beneath the surface of that motion. Individuals alter spacing, pacing, and angle in subtle ways, as though the failed sequence has been carried forward into the next attempt. This is where adaptation becomes visible, not as a dramatic change, but as refinement. A method that proved ineffective may be shortened, delayed, or approached from another side. The structure remains familiar, yet its details begin to change. Over time, these changes accumulate. A population facing the same type of prey across many seasons does not simply repeat one inherited pattern without variation. It adjusts through repeated encounters, preserving what works and gradually discarding what does not. The process is slow, shaped by memory and repetition rather than sudden invention. Through this gradual refinement, strategy becomes more precise, more closely matched to the conditions in which it is used. For younger orcas, failure is especially important. Their early involvement in hunts is often marked by inconsistency. They may move too soon, drift too far from position, or misjudge the timing of an approach. In these moments, the failure is not only collective, but deeply instructive. The young individual remains within the unfolding sequence long enough to experience where alignment was lost, where the prey changed direction, or where their own movement did not match the rhythm of the group. Because they remain close to experienced adults, these lessons do not need to be explained. They are embedded in the contrast between what the younger orca attempted and what the others maintained. A calf or juvenile can witness how an elder holds position, delays action, or redirects at the exact moment needed. The difference becomes part of the learning, not through correction in any human sense, but through continued exposure to a more effective pattern. Observational learning deepens this process across the pod. An individual does not need to make every mistake personally in order to absorb its meaning. By remaining within the group during unsuccessful hunts, younger orcas witness how others respond when a plan does not unfold as expected. They observe the regrouping, the altered approach on the next attempt, and the subtle changes that emerge afterward. In this way, knowledge spreads without words, carried through repeated, shared experience. Even adults continue this quiet learning. Conditions change, prey responds differently, and no method remains perfect in every situation. A failed hunt can reveal a new resistance in the prey, a shift in the environment, or a weakness in timing that had gone unnoticed before. The group absorbs this information and carries it forward, allowing future encounters to unfold with slightly different precision. Within this rhythm of effort and revision, failure loses its sharp edge. It becomes part of the continuity of learning, one more passage through which the pod refines itself. What escapes in one moment leaves behind a trace, and from that trace, a better alignment gradually forms. After movement settles and the outcome is secured, the pace shifts into something quieter, less defined by motion and more by proximity. The group gathers around what has been obtained, not in disorder, but in a loose arrangement that reflects familiarity. There is no rush to separate, no immediate scattering. Instead, individuals remain near one another, their positions shaped by relationships that persist beyond the moment of the hunt. Feeding begins in a way that does not isolate effort. Access to the catch is shared, with portions taken in sequence rather than through competition. Individuals approach, take, and withdraw, allowing others to move in without disruption. This rhythm creates a flow that is continuous, guided by an understanding that extends across the group. The absence of conflict reflects a structure where cooperation does not end when the hunt concludes, but carries into how the result is used. Within this process, certain individuals receive priority, not through force, but through established patterns of care. Calves remain close to their mothers, positioned where access is easier and more consistent. Their movements are supported by the presence of adults who adjust slightly to create space, ensuring that the youngest members are able to feed. This priority is not temporary, but part of a broader system that supports development over time. Mothers themselves often remain central during feeding, maintaining a position that allows them to provide for their offspring while also participating in the shared distribution. Their role bridges individual need and group structure, connecting the continuity of the pod with the immediate act of feeding. Around them, others continue to move in and out, maintaining the rhythm without disrupting the balance. The act of sharing extends beyond necessity. It reinforces connections that are maintained throughout daily life. Individuals that move together, hunt together, and travel together also feed together, strengthening bonds through repeated interaction. The exchange of food becomes another layer of communication, one that reflects trust and familiarity rather than competition. This behavior supports stability within the group. By distributing resources rather than concentrating them, the pod maintains cohesion, reducing the potential for conflict and ensuring that each member remains integrated within the whole. The structure that guided the hunt continues to shape the aftermath, preserving alignment even as the focus shifts from action to consumption. Younger orcas observe this process closely, just as they do during earlier stages of the hunt. They learn not only how to obtain food, but how it is shared, how access is given, and how movement adjusts to accommodate others. These observations become part of their understanding, carried forward as they grow and take on more active roles within the group. Feeding may continue over an extended period, depending on the size of the catch and the number of individuals present. During this time, the group remains connected, moving together even as they feed. The boundary between individual and collective action remains fluid, with each moment contributing to the overall structure. Once the available resources are diminished, the group gradually shifts away, returning to a more neutral pattern of movement. There is no abrupt ending, only a gentle transition back into the broader flow of the ocean. The bonds reinforced during feeding persist, carried forward into whatever follows. In this continuation, the significance of sharing becomes clear. It is not a separate behavior, but part of the same system that governs movement, coordination, and learning. Through the distribution of food, the group maintains its cohesion, ensuring that the outcome of the hunt supports not only immediate needs, but the ongoing stability of the pod itself. There are moments when movement slows for reasons that are not immediately visible, when the usual patterns of travel and coordination soften into something more subdued. The group remains together, yet its rhythm changes, as though attention has turned inward, shaped by an absence that alters the space between individuals. Within these shifts, attachment becomes more apparent. Orcas maintain close relationships that extend far beyond simple proximity, forming bonds that are reinforced through years of shared experience. Individuals travel side by side, adjust their pace to remain aligned, and respond to one another in ways that reflect familiarity rather than coincidence. These connections are not brief. They persist across long periods, carried forward through repeated interaction and mutual awareness. When one member is lost, the effect is not confined to a single moment. The group continues to move, yet its behavior may change in ways that suggest a deeper response. Individuals have been observed remaining near a body, supporting it at the surface, or staying close long after the usual patterns would have resumed. This extended presence does not serve a clear physical purpose, yet it reflects a continuation of connection that has not fully dissolved. The alteration in behavior can extend beyond these immediate responses. Travel may become slower, vocal patterns may shift, and the spacing between individuals can change as the group adjusts to the absence. These variations are not uniform across all situations, but they reveal a sensitivity to loss that influences how the group reorganizes itself over time. Calves that lose their mothers face a particularly profound change. The structure that once guided their movement and learning is no longer present in the same form. Other members of the pod may remain nearby, yet the specific bond that shaped their early life has been altered. This change can affect how they move, how they feed, and how they integrate within the group, reflecting the importance of individual relationships within the broader system. Memory plays a central role in these processes. Orcas retain recognition of individuals over extended periods, allowing relationships to persist even after separation. This capacity for long-term social memory supports the continuity of bonds, linking past interactions with present behavior. When a member is no longer present, the memory of that individual does not disappear. It remains within the structure of the group, influencing how others respond and adjust. These responses suggest that emotional processing is intertwined with social structure. The brain systems that support recognition and interaction also allow for responses that extend beyond immediate survival needs. Behavior reflects not only the current state of the environment, but the history shared between individuals, shaping actions in ways that are not purely functional. Within the group, these emotional dimensions remain integrated with daily life. Movement continues, coordination persists, and the broader patterns of existence carry forward. Yet within these ongoing processes, there are subtle changes that reveal the depth of connection that exists between individuals. The absence of one member does not go unnoticed. It leaves a trace that influences how the group moves, how it organizes itself, and how it maintains its cohesion. Over time, the group adapts, finding a new balance that incorporates the change. Relationships shift, roles may adjust, and the structure continues to evolve. The memory of what was remains part of this new arrangement, woven into the ongoing life of the pod. Through these patterns, the emotional lives of orcas become visible not through dramatic display, but through sustained and consistent behavior. Attachment, loss, and memory are expressed in ways that align with the calm continuity of their existence, shaping how they move together through the ocean over time. In quieter intervals, when the immediate demands of movement and feeding recede, behavior begins to shift into patterns that do not serve an obvious purpose. The group remains together, yet their actions become less directed. unfolding in ways that seem to explore rather than achieve. These moments are marked by repetition, variation, and a kind of freedom that contrasts with the precision seen during the hunt. Along the surface, individuals sometimes position themselves near passing swells, adjusting their bodies to match the motion of the water. With subtle changes in angle and speed, they allow the energy of the wave to carry them forward, maintaining alignment without continuous effort. This interaction can repeat multiple times, with individuals returning to the same position, refining their movement as they re-enter the flow. The motion itself appears smooth and controlled, yet it is not driven by necessity. Objects encountered in the water may also become part of this behavior. Pieces of floating material, fragments of prey, or even bubbles rising through the water can be engaged, moved, and released. An individual may carry an object briefly, pass it to another, or allow it to drift before retrieving it again. These exchanges often occur in sequences, with the same action repeated in slightly different forms, suggesting an interest that extends beyond immediate use. At times, these interactions involve elements of previous hunts, where portions of prey are manipulated without being consumed immediately. The object is lifted, turned, or allowed to fall, then approached again from a new angle. This process can continue for extended periods, with multiple individuals participating in turn. The actions remain controlled, lacking the urgency that defined the hunt itself, yet retaining a level of coordination that reflects shared awareness. Younger orcas are often more visibly engaged in these sequences, though adults participate as well. Calves and juveniles move with greater variation, experimenting with speed, direction, and contact. Their movements may appear less precise, yet they are guided by the same underlying structure, gradually aligning with the patterns demonstrated by older members of the group. Through repetition, their control improves, and their responses become more consistent. These repeated interactions suggest a connection to learning, though not in a direct or immediate sense. The manipulation of objects, the adjustment of movement, and the coordination between individuals all mirror elements that are present in more structured activities. By engaging in these actions without pressure, younger orcas refine their abilities, developing timing and control that will later support more demanding tasks. At the same time, these behaviors contribute to the maintenance of social bonds. Individuals remain in close proximity, responding to one another through shared activity rather than necessity. The repetition of actions, the passing of objects, and the alignment of movement all reinforce familiarity, strengthening the connections that define the group. These moments of interaction extend the cohesion established during more purposeful activities, allowing relationships to persist in a different context. The boundary between practice and play remains fluid. What appears to be exploration may also serve as preparation, and what serves as preparation may also reinforce connection. The distinction is not clearly defined and may not need to be. Within the continuous life of the pod, these elements coexist, shaping behavior in ways that support both individual development and collective stability. As these sequences unfold, the ocean becomes a space not only for survival, but for variation and repetition that carry their own significance. Movement continues, yet its purpose shifts, creating moments where action is guided by curiosity and interaction rather than necessity alone. Between one movement and the next, information passes through the group in forms that are often too subtle to notice from the outside. The hunt does not rely on a single continuous signal, but on a shifting balance between sound and its absence, each chosen according to what the moment requires. Within this balance, communication becomes fluid, adapting to conditions as they unfold. Short vocal signals move through the water in measured intervals, carrying precise information about position and timing. These calls are not constant. They appear at points where adjustment is needed, allowing individuals to confirm alignment without disrupting the overall structure. A brief sequence may indicate a shift in direction, a change in spacing, or the readiness to move closer. Once the information is exchanged, the sound fades, returning the group to a quieter state. This restraint allows communication to remain efficient. By limiting vocalization to essential moments, the orcas reduce unnecessary noise, preserving clarity within the group. Each signal stands out against the surrounding water, distinct and purposeful, ensuring that it is recognized without confusion. The simplicity of these exchanges supports coordination without drawing attention beyond what is required. At other times, silence becomes the primary mode of communication. The absence of sound carries its own meaning, creating a condition where external cues can be detected more clearly. In these moments, individuals rely on awareness of movement and position, adjusting in response to what they perceive without the need for vocal reinforcement. The group remains connected through shared understanding, maintaining alignment even when no signals are exchanged. The ability to shift between these modes reflects a flexible system. Communication is not fixed in one form, but changes in response to the environment and the behavior of the target. When conditions allow for sound without consequence, vocal signals support coordination. When silence offers an advantage, the group transitions smoothly, maintaining cohesion through observation and anticipation. Throughout the hunt, awareness is distributed across all members. Each individual tracks not only the target, but also the positions of others, integrating this information into their own movement. This shared awareness reduces the need for constant signaling, as much of the coordination occurs through anticipation rather than instruction. Small adjustments ripple through the group, each one aligned with the broader pattern. As the situation evolves, communication adapts accordingly. Early stages may involve more frequent signals as positioning is established, while later phases may rely on silence as proximity increases. These shifts are not abrupt. They unfold gradually, reflecting the continuous exchange between perception and response that defines the hunt. Even within silence, the group remains connected. Subtle cues, such as changes in speed, direction, or spacing, convey information that is understood without sound. These cues are reinforced through experience, allowing individuals to interpret them with precision. The result is a system where communication extends beyond vocalization, encompassing the full range of movement within the group. This layered approach ensures that coordination is maintained under varying conditions. Whether through brief signals or shared silence, the group preserves its structure, allowing each individual to act in alignment with the others. The hunt progresses not through constant instruction, but through a dynamic balance of communication that supports both clarity and discretion. Within this balance, the exchange of information remains continuous, even when it is not audible. The group moves as a connected whole, guided by signals that appear and disappear as needed, shaping each moment with a quiet precision that reflects the depth of their shared awareness. In the continuity of the pod, there is often a presence that remains steady as others change around it, a figure whose movements carry the weight of accumulated experience rather than immediate reaction. This presence is not separate from the group, yet it shapes the direction of its flow, guiding without overt display. Older females, having lived through many cycles of change, hold a position that is defined less by authority and more by reliability. Their influence becomes visible in how the group navigates through shifting conditions. Routes are not chosen at random, nor are they followed without adjustment. The matriarch carries a memory of paths that have led to sustenance before, of places where patterns repeat with enough consistency to be trusted. These paths are not fixed lines, but flexible sequences that adapt to variation while retaining their underlying structure. When the group moves along these routes, it does so with a quiet confidence, shaped by knowledge that extends beyond the present moment. This knowledge includes an awareness of timing, of when certain areas are more likely to provide what is needed. Seasonal changes alter the distribution of prey, and the matriarch's experience allows the group to anticipate these shifts. Movement is guided not by immediate observation alone, but by an understanding of how conditions tend to unfold over time. This anticipation reduces uncertainty, allowing the group to position itself where opportunities are more likely to emerge. During hunts, this influence continues, though it remains subtle. The matriarch does not direct each action through visible command. Instead, her positioning and timing contribute to the formation of the group's structure. By holding a certain place within the arrangement, she helps shape how others align, reinforcing patterns that have proven effective in past encounters. Her movements reflect decisions informed by experience, and these decisions are integrated into the collective behavior of the pod. Younger members, observing this consistency, begin to align with it over time. They follow not through instruction, but through repeated exposure to actions that produce reliable outcomes. The matriarch's role becomes part of the learning environment, where guidance is embedded in movement rather than conveyed through direct signals. This form of leadership allows knowledge to be transferred without disruption, maintaining continuity across generations. The influence of older females extends into periods where conditions become less predictable. In times of scarcity, when resources are more difficult to locate, the value of accumulated experience becomes more pronounced. The matriarch's memory of alternative routes or less frequently used areas can guide the group toward options that might otherwise remain unnoticed. This capacity to draw from a broader range of experience supports the group's ability to adapt without losing cohesion. Over time, the presence of a matriarch contributes to the overall stability of the pod. Her guidance supports not only immediate decisions, but the long-term survival of the group. By maintaining consistent patterns and adapting them when necessary, she helps ensure that knowledge is preserved and applied effectively. This continuity strengthens the resilience of the pod, allowing it to navigate both familiar and changing conditions. When such an individual is no longer present, the effect can be seen in how the group adjusts. Movement may become less certain, patterns less defined, until new alignments gradually form. This transition reflects the significance of the matriarch's role, not as a singular force, but as a central thread within the fabric of the group. Through this quiet leadership, older females shape the trajectory of the pod, guiding it through the ocean with a depth of understanding that emerges from time, memory, and the steady repetition of experience. Years pass in ways that are not marked by seasons alone, but by the gradual layering of experience within each individual. Time becomes part of the structure of the pod, carried in the bodies and memories of those who remain present across long intervals. Among these, females often continue well beyond the period when they produce offspring, extending their lives into stages that hold a different kind of significance. This extended lifespan shapes the group in ways that are not immediately visible. As individuals age, their role shifts from direct contribution through reproduction to a broader influence rooted in accumulated knowledge. The years they have lived contain patterns that have repeated with variation, encounters that have unfolded under different conditions, and routes that have led through both abundance and scarcity. This depth of experience becomes a resource that supports the entire group. Long life allows knowledge to persist without interruption. Instead of being lost at the end of each generation, it remains present, carried forward through individuals who continue to participate in the daily movement of the pod. This continuity strengthens the connection between past and present, ensuring that information gathered over time can still be applied when similar conditions arise again. The group does not begin anew with each generation. It builds upon what has already been learned. For younger members, the presence of older individuals provides a stable reference within a changing environment. They move alongside those who have already encountered many of the situations they will face, absorbing patterns through observation and shared experience. The process does not require formal instruction. It unfolds through proximity, where each movement and decision reflects a depth of understanding that has been shaped over years. Survival advantages emerge from this continuity. When conditions become less predictable, the experience held by older individuals can guide the group toward more reliable outcomes. They may recall alternative pathways, less obvious opportunities, or timing that differs from the immediate pattern. This ability to draw from a broader range of experience allows the pod to adapt without losing coherence, maintaining alignment even as circumstances change. The influence of age is not limited to specific events. It permeates the overall stability of the group, contributing to consistency in movement, coordination, and decision-making. Individuals who have lived longer provide a steady presence that supports the cohesion of the pod, reinforcing patterns that have proven effective over time. This stability reduces uncertainty, allowing the group to navigate its environment with a greater degree of confidence. Even in moments of routine, the presence of experienced individuals shapes subtle aspects of behavior. The spacing between members, the timing of transitions, and the selection of direction all reflect an underlying continuity that has been refined across years. These details may not be immediately apparent, yet they contribute to the overall effectiveness of the group's movement and interaction. As time continues, new generations emerge within this structure, entering a system that already holds a depth of accumulated knowledge. They grow within an environment where experience is not abstract, but present in the individuals around them. This allows learning to occur within a stable framework, where each new individual contributes to the ongoing continuity of the pod. Through this extended lifespan, the group maintains a connection to its own history. The past remains active within the present, guiding decisions and shaping outcomes in ways that extend beyond immediate perception. Survival, in this context, is not only a matter of strength or speed, but of memory carried across time, preserved through individuals who remain long enough to share what they have learned. Change does not arrive all at once. It appears first as a slight variation, a movement that differs just enough to be noticed, then fades into repetition until it begins to settle into something more consistent. Within the lives of orcas, these small shifts can grow into new patterns, altering how a group interacts with its environment over time. In certain regions, behaviors have been observed that do not match earlier descriptions of the same populations. A group may begin to approach prey in a new way, adjusting timing or position in a sequence that had not been recorded before. These changes often begin with a few individuals, emerging within the natural variation that exists in any repeated activity. At first, they may appear as isolated instances, not yet fully formed into a stable pattern. As these variations prove effective, they begin to repeat. Other members of the group observe the outcome, and gradually incorporate elements of the new approach into their own behavior. The process is not immediate, but it can unfold more quickly than expected, especially within tightly connected social structures. Through repeated exposure, what was once a variation becomes a shared method, integrated into the group's existing patterns. This spread does not require physical separation or genetic change. It moves through observation and imitation, carried by the same pathways that transmit other learned behaviors. A technique can pass from one individual to another, then extend across the pod, eventually becoming part of the group's identity. In this way, behavior evolves within a population, shaped by experience rather than inheritance alone. Environmental conditions play a significant role in guiding these changes. As the distribution of prey shifts, whether through natural cycles or longer-term trends, the strategies that once proved reliable may become less effective. In response, orcas adjust, exploring new approaches that align with the altered conditions. These adjustments are not random. They are grounded in the existing framework of behavior, modified to suit new circumstances. Over time, these adaptations can become distinct enough to differentiate one population from another, even within the same broader region. Groups facing different environmental pressures may develop unique methods, reflecting the specific challenges they encounter. This divergence contributes to the diversity of behavior observed across the species, where each group carries patterns shaped by its own experience. Human activity has introduced additional layers of change into this process. The presence of vessels, alterations in prey availability, and shifts in the acoustic environment all influence how orcas move and interact. In some cases, new behaviors have emerged in response to these factors, reflecting an ability to adapt to conditions that differ from those encountered in the past. These changes may involve adjustments in movement, interaction with objects, or shifts in timing that align with new patterns in the environment. The influence of these external factors does not produce uniform outcomes. Different groups respond in different ways, depending on their existing patterns and the specific conditions they face. Some may incorporate new behaviors more readily, while others maintain established methods with only minor adjustments. This variability reflects the balance between continuity and change that defines their behavior. As new patterns become established, they are carried forward through the same processes that sustain other aspects of orca life. Younger individuals observe and adopt them, integrating these changes into their own development. Over time, what began as a variation becomes part of the group's ongoing structure, contributing to a dynamic system that continues to evolve. Within this gradual unfolding, the ocean remains the setting for constant adaptation. Behaviors shift, patterns emerge, and the connection between past and present continues to shape how each group moves through its environment. In recent years, a different kind of encounter has begun to unfold at the surface, where the paths of orcas and human vessels intersect more frequently. These moments do not follow the familiar structure of hunting or travel. Instead, they emerge as interactions that appear deliberate, repeated, and still not fully understood, shaped by conditions that are relatively new in the long span of their experience. Groups of orcas have been observed approaching boats with a focus that extends beyond simple proximity. They move alongside hulls, adjust their position beneath the waterline, and make contact with specific parts of the vessel. The rudder, in particular, has drawn repeated attention, with individuals directing force toward it in ways that alter its movement. These actions are not isolated incidents. They have occurred across multiple encounters, often involving similar sequences that suggest a pattern rather than chance. The interactions tend to follow a recognizable structure. Orcas approach in coordination, sometimes from below, sometimes from the side, aligning themselves with the motion of the boat. Contact is made in controlled bursts, not as a single impact, but as a series of measured engagements. After each interaction, the group may withdraw briefly, then return, repeating the sequence with slight variation. This repetition gives the behavior a rhythm that mirrors other forms of coordinated activity seen within the pod. What remains uncertain is the underlying motivation. Several possibilities have been considered, each reflecting different aspects of orca behavior. In some interpretations, the interaction resembles play, an extension of the exploratory patterns observed during quieter periods. The movement of the vessel, the resistance of its structure, and the response it produces may create a dynamic that invites repeated engagement. Another possibility suggests a form of learning, where individuals investigate a novel object within their environment. Boats introduce elements that differ from natural features, including sound, shape, and motion. By interacting with these elements, orcas may be gathering information, testing responses, and incorporating new experiences into their existing understanding. The repeated focus on specific parts of the vessel could reflect a developing familiarity, where certain interactions produce more noticeable effects. There is also consideration that these behaviors may be responses to prior encounters, shaped by experiences that have influenced how orcas perceive and react to vessels. The acoustic presence of engines, the physical disturbance created by movement, and the broader impact of human activity on the marine environment all contribute to a context that is still being explored. These factors may interact in ways that lead to new patterns of behavior emerging from the intersection between natural processes and external influence. Scientific investigation into these interactions is ongoing, relying on observation, documentation, and comparison across different regions. Researchers examine the consistency of the behavior, the composition of the groups involved, and the environmental conditions present during each encounter. Through this process, patterns begin to form, yet many aspects remain open, reflecting the complexity of interpreting behavior that does not fit established categories. What is clear is that these interactions represent a shift, a point where the established patterns of orca life meet a changing environment shaped by human presence. The behavior is neither random nor fully predictable, existing within a space that continues to evolve as conditions change. Within this unfolding pattern, the ocean carries both familiar rhythms and new variations. Orcas move through it with the same underlying structure that has guided them for generations, yet their responses begin to reflect influences that extend beyond what was once encountered. The interaction with boats becomes part of this broader story, a developing sequence that continues to take shape without fully revealing its direction. Perception, for an orca, is not centered on what can be seen, but on what can be sensed across a wider field that extends in all directions at once. The ocean is not experienced as an open void, but as a medium filled with continuous information, where sound carries shape, distance, and motion through layers that remain invisible to the eye. Within this world, sound becomes the primary structure through which space is understood. Every movement, whether produced by the orca itself or by something far beyond immediate reach, creates disturbances that travel outward. These disturbances do not fade instantly. They persist, moving through the water with clarity that allows them to be detected long after their source has shifted. The result is an environment where presence can be known without direct contact, where distance does not erase awareness. As an orca moves, It exists within a field of overlapping signals. Some are produced intentionally, brief pulses that extend outward and return with information shaped by what they encounter. Others arrive from the environment, carried through currents and across depth, forming a background that can be interpreted and filtered. Together, these signals create a layered perception where near and distant elements are integrated into a continuous sense of space. Navigation through this environment does not rely on fixed markers. There are no permanent boundaries, no stable landmarks that remain unchanged over time. Instead, orientation emerges from gradients, subtle differences in temperature, salinity, and sound that shift gradually across distance. These variations form patterns that can be followed, allowing movement to remain directed even in regions that appear uniform from above. Over long journeys, memory supports this process. The orca carries within it a record of previous movement, not as a simple path, but as an understanding of how different regions relate to one another. This understanding allows it to move with confidence across vast distances, adjusting its course as conditions change while maintaining a connection to known patterns. The ocean becomes navigable not through sight, but through an internal map shaped by experience. Awareness extends beyond immediate surroundings. Sounds produced far away can indicate the presence of other animals, shifts in activity, or changes in the environment that have not yet reached the orca directly. These distant signals provide context, allowing the individual to anticipate what lies ahead rather than reacting only to what is nearby. The sense of space expands, encompassing areas that remain out of sight but not beyond perception. Even in areas where light diminishes, this awareness does not fade. The absence of visual detail does not create emptiness. Instead, the environment remains structured through sound, with objects and movement defined by the way they interact with the surrounding medium. The orca continues to move with precision, guided by information that remains consistent regardless of visibility. Within the group, this sensory experience is shared. Each individual contributes to the collective awareness, responding to signals that are both personal and communal. The alignment observed in their movement reflects this shared perception, where multiple individuals interpret the same field of information and adjust in ways that maintain cohesion. The group becomes a network of sensing bodies, each connected through the medium they inhabit. This perspective transforms the ocean into a space that is continuously active, filled with layers of information that extend beyond what can be seen. Movement is guided not by a single sense, but by the integration of many, with sound providing a framework that supports navigation, interaction, and understanding. Through this way of perceiving, the orca moves within an environment that is both vast and immediate, where distance does not limit awareness, and where the unseen remains present through the quiet transmission of signals carried endlessly through water. Power in the ocean is not held in a single moment, nor by a single action. It unfolds across relationships, shaped by the presence of those that influence the movement and distribution of others. Within this shifting network, orcas occupy a position that carries broad effects, not through constant dominance, but through the patterns they create over time. As apex predators, they exist at a point in the food web where few natural forces act upon them directly. This position allows their choices, where they move, what they pursue, how often they engage, to ripple outward into the surrounding environment. Their influence is not limited to the immediate outcome of a hunt. It extends into the behavior of the species around them, shaping how those species move, gather, and respond. Prey populations adjust in the presence of orcas, altering their patterns in ways that reduce risk. Groups may change their spacing, shift their routes, or modify the timing of their movement. These adjustments can affect where and how other interactions occur, creating a cascade of changes that reach beyond the direct relationship between predator and prey. The ocean becomes structured not only by physical conditions, but by the anticipation of encounters that may or may not occur. This influence helps regulate populations over time. By focusing on certain individuals, those that are separated, weakened, or less aligned with their group, orcas contribute to a process that maintains balance within prey species. The removal of these individuals can strengthen the overall condition of the population, allowing it to remain resilient in changing conditions. This form of regulation is not constant or uniform, but it contributes to the stability of the system as a whole. The effects extend further, touching species that are not directly targeted. When prey alters its behavior, it changes how it interacts with its own environment, affecting the distribution of resources and the relationships between other organisms. These indirect influences create layers of connection, where the presence of orcas shapes patterns that move through multiple levels of the ecosystem. In this way, the role of orcas is not defined solely by their position at the top, but by how their actions integrate into a broader system. Their movement, their choices, and their timing all contribute to a dynamic balance that is maintained through continuous adjustment. The ocean does not remain static. It shifts in response to countless interactions, with orcas playing a part in guiding that change. The balance itself is not a fixed state. It is an ongoing process where populations rise and fall, conditions change, and relationships evolve. Orcas participate in this process, influencing it without controlling it entirely. Their presence adds a layer of structure, shaping how other species distribute themselves across space and time. Even when not actively hunting, their influence persists. The knowledge of their presence can alter behavior, creating patterns of avoidance or adjustment that remain in place. This effect extends beyond direct contact, reinforcing the role they play within the ecosystem. Through these interactions, the ocean maintains a form of equilibrium that is not rigid, but responsive. Orcas contribute to this equilibrium by interacting with other species in ways that distribute pressure and opportunity across the system. Their role reflects a balance between influence and adaptation, where their presence shapes the environment while also being shaped by it. Within this network, power is not expressed through constant action, but through the steady accumulation of effects that guide the movement and interaction of life across the ocean. The presence of human activity enters the ocean in ways that are not always visible, yet it alters the conditions through which orcas move and interact. These changes do not arrive as a single event, but as a gradual accumulation, shaping the environment through sound, substance, and shifting patterns of life that extend across wide areas. One of the most immediate influences is sound. Engines, shipping routes, and industrial activity introduce continuous noise into the water, creating a background that differs from the quieter conditions that once prevailed. This added layer of sound can interfere with the transmission of signals, reducing the clarity of the acoustic field through which orcas perceive their surroundings. Communication that depends on precise timing and recognition becomes more difficult when overlapping noise distorts or masks important details. The effect is not always uniform. In some areas, the level of noise remains intermittent, allowing periods where communication can occur with greater clarity. In others, the presence of sound is more constant, creating a persistent condition that requires adjustment. Orcas may alter the frequency, timing, or intensity of their calls and response, yet these adjustments do not fully restore the original clarity. The environment itself has changed, reshaping how information moves through it. At the same time, the availability of prey has shifted in many regions. Changes in climate, fishing practices, and broader ecological pressures have influenced the distribution and abundance of species that orcas depend on. In some cases, populations of key prey have declined, requiring orcas to travel further or adjust their strategies to locate sufficient resources. These changes ripple through their behavior, affecting movement patterns, timing, and the energy required to sustain the group. The accumulation of pollutants introduces another layer of complexity. Chemical substances released into the environment can persist in the water and enter the food chain, becoming concentrated as they move upward through successive levels. Orcas, positioned near the top, can accumulate these compounds over time, storing them within their bodies. This process does not produce immediate, visible effects, yet it can influence health in ways that become apparent across longer periods. The interaction between these factors creates challenges that extend beyond any single influence. Noise, shifting prey, availability, and chemical accumulation do not act in isolation. They combine to form a changing environment where conditions are less predictable and, at times, more difficult to navigate. Orcas continue to adapt within this context, adjusting their behavior in response to the pressures they encounter. Conservation efforts have emerged as a response to these changes, aiming to reduce the impact of human activity and support the stability of marine ecosystems. Measures may include the regulation of noise levels, the management of fisheries, and the reduction of pollutants entering the ocean. These efforts seek to preserve the conditions that allow orcas to maintain their patterns of communication, movement, and social structure. The effectiveness of these efforts varies across regions, shaped by the complexity of the issues involved and the scale at which they occur. The ocean is interconnected, and changes in one area can influence conditions elsewhere. This interconnectedness requires approaches that consider both local and broader patterns, recognizing that the factors affecting orcas extend beyond immediate surroundings. Within this evolving environment, orcas continue to move with the same underlying structure that has guided them over time. Their responses reflect both resilience and sensitivity, adjusting to conditions that differ from those encountered in the past. The ocean remains their domain, yet it carries new layers of influence that shape how they experience it, adding complexity to the balance they maintain as they move through its depths. Beyond what has been observed and described, there remains a wide space where understanding fades into uncertainty. The patterns that can be seen, the behaviors that repeat, and the structures that appear consistent all suggest depth, yet they do not fully reveal the extent of what lies beneath. Each discovery brings clarity, but also expands the sense of what remains unknown. Intelligence, as it appears in orcas, resists simple boundaries. Their actions show flexibility, memory, and coordination, yet the limits of these capacities are difficult to define. The way they respond to new situations suggests an ability to adapt, but the full range of this adaptability remains unclear. There are moments when behavior shifts in ways that have not been anticipated, hinting at processes that extend beyond current understanding. Communication offers a similar challenge. The patterns of sound that have been recorded and analyzed reveal structure and variation, yet they represent only a portion of what may be occurring. The meaning carried within these signals, the nuances that differentiate one call from another, and the ways in which sequences combine to convey information are not fully resolved. What is heard can be described, but what is understood within the group remains partly hidden. Cultural behavior adds another layer of complexity. The transmission of learned patterns across generations suggests a form of continuity that resembles tradition. Groups maintain distinct behaviors, passing them forward through observation and repetition. Yet the depth of this cultural structure, how extensive it is, how it changes over time, and how it interacts with other aspects of their lives, remains only partially visible. Each population may hold variations that have not yet been observed, existing beyond the range of current study. Even within hunting behavior, which has been closely documented, there are likely strategies that remain unrecorded. The ocean is vast, and many interactions occur far from observation. Techniques that are practiced in remote regions or under conditions that are difficult to study may never be fully captured. What is known represents a portion of a broader range of possibilities, shaped by environments and experiences that are not always accessible. The challenge of understanding is shaped by the medium itself. The ocean limits direct observation, obscuring detail and distance, allowing only fragments of behavior to be seen at any one time. Researchers piece together these fragments, forming patterns that approximate the whole, yet gaps remain where information cannot be easily obtained. These gaps are not empty, but filled with activity that continues beyond the reach of current methods. Technological advances have expanded what can be recorded, revealing aspects of movement, sound, and interaction that were once hidden. Even so, each new layer of detail introduces further questions, suggesting that understanding is not a fixed destination, but a process that continues to unfold. The more closely behavior is examined, the more intricate it appears, resisting simple explanation. Within this uncertainty, there is a balance between what is known and what is inferred. Observations provide evidence, yet interpretation requires caution, as behavior that appears similar on the surface may carry different meanings within the group. The distinction between appearance and understanding remains an ongoing consideration, shaping how knowledge develops over time. The presence of these unknowns does not diminish what has been learned. Instead, it frames it within a larger context, where each insight contributes to a growing, yet incomplete picture. Orcas move through their environment with a continuity that is fully real, while the understanding of that continuity remains in progress. In this space, between observation and comprehension, the ocean holds its complexity, allowing patterns to be seen while keeping their full meaning just beyond complete reach. There is a point, after all movement and pattern have been observed, where the image of a predator begins to change. What remains is not defined by speed or force alone, but by the way each action is shaped before it unfolds. The orca does not move through the ocean as a constant pursuer. It exists within a structure of decisions, where timing, position, and awareness hold equal weight with strength. Across everything that has been seen, from coordinated hunts to quieter intervals of interaction, a consistent pattern emerges. Power is present, yet it is rarely used without purpose. Movement is efficient, not excessive. Even in moments that carry intensity, there is a sense of control that guides each action, preventing it from becoming chaotic. This balance between capability and restraint defines how the orca engages with its environment. Intelligence is woven into this balance, not as a separate trait, but as part of the same system that governs behavior. Memory, learning, and communication all contribute to a way of existing that adapts without losing continuity. The group functions as more than a collection of individuals, forming a network where knowledge is shared, preserved, and applied. Each member participates in this system, contributing to a structure that extends beyond any single moment. This combination of power, intelligence, and restraint creates a presence that is both precise and enduring. The orca does not rely on constant action to maintain its role. Instead, it moves with an understanding of when to act and when to remain still, allowing situations to develop before responding. This measured approach reflects a depth of awareness that shapes every aspect of its behavior. Within the broader ocean, this presence contributes to a level of complexity that is not immediately visible. The interactions between species, the adjustments made in response to changing conditions, and the patterns that persist across time all form part of a larger system. Orcas occupy a place within this system that connects multiple layers, influencing and responding to the environment in ways that extend beyond direct observation. Their role cannot be reduced to that of a simple predator. They are participants in a network of relationships that includes social structure, cultural transmission, and environmental interaction. Each of these elements contributes to an existence that is dynamic, where behavior evolves while remaining grounded in continuity. The ocean around them reflects this complexity, holding patterns that are shaped by both physical forces and living systems. As the surface shifts and light fades into depth, the impression of disorder gives way to something more structured. Movements that seem isolated begin to align, forming patterns that repeat with variation. Within these patterns, the orca moves as part of a system that is both responsive and organized, guided by principles that remain consistent even as conditions change. A quiet realization settles into this understanding. Beneath the surface, the ocean is not defined by randomness. It holds a form of order that emerges through interaction, through the alignment of movement and the continuity of behavior. Within this order, orcas move with clarity, their presence reflecting a balance that connects strength with awareness. In this way, the image of the orca expands. It is no longer seen only as a hunter, but as a participant in a deeper structure, where intelligence and restraint shape the outcome as much as power itself. The ocean, in turn, reveals itself as a space where these elements come together, forming a world that is watchful, organized, and quietly alive with understanding.